Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
It was a humid Tuesday afternoon when I first heard the familiar rumble of Patrick's truck outside my house. I was midway through sorting an old chest of clothes in the attic, wearing a faded denim miniskirt I'd unearthed moments earlier, chuckling at my younger self's questionable fashion choices. I hadn't expected company, let alone Patrick, my 25-year-old nephew, who usually gave advance notice before visiting. Still, I called out as I descended the creaking stairs. "Patrick, is that you?" "Yeah, Aunt Kathleen. Uncle Mike said you needed the wiring looked at," he replied, stepping through the open door, toolbox in hand. His voice was calm, but his eyes flickered briefly as they caught sight of my outfit. "I didn't realize you were coming today," I said, brushing off imaginary dust from my skirt, suddenly self-conscious. "Uncle said it was urgent." His tone was casual, but the way his gaze lingered a second too long wasn't. I ignored it, chalking it up to the awkwardness of my attire and his youth. "I was just finishing up some cleaning. Let me show you where the issue is," I offered, leading him to the kitchen. As I explained the problem, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Patrick's responses were clipped, and though he worked efficiently, there was a tension in the air that was hard to ignore. Halfway through replacing the faulty wiring, Patrick asked, "So, do you always wear skirts like that when you're home alone?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Just curious. It's different." "It's just an old thing I found while cleaning," I said firmly, hoping to put an end to the conversation. Patrick nodded but didn't say more. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the occasional clink of his tools. When he was done, I walked him to the door, thanking him for his help. "No problem," he said, hesitating before stepping out. His eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of something unspoken passing between us before he turned and left. As I watched his truck pull away, unease settled in my chest. Something had changed, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. That evening, as the summer sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on the porch sipping tea, trying to shake the strange undercurrent of the day. The silence was comforting until my phone buzzed, shattering the tranquility. It was a message from Patrick. "Thanks for letting me help today. There's something I need to say." I hesitated before typing back, "What's on your mind?" His reply came almost instantly, like he'd been waiting for permission to open a floodgate. "I've been struggling with this for a while, Aunt Kathleen, but I can't pretend anymore. I feel something for you, something more than I should." I stared at the screen, the words blurring before my eyes. My hand trembled as I placed the phone down, a surge of disbelief and unease washing over me. A follow-up message buzzed in. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. You're not just my aunt. You're someone I can't stop thinking about." I finally picked up the phone and dialed his number. He answered after the first ring, his voice unsteady. "Patrick," I began, my tone firm. "Do you hear yourself? Do you realize what you're saying?" "I do," he said softly, almost pleading. "I've tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. You mean so much to me, and I needed you to know." "Patrick, this is beyond inappropriate," I said, trying to maintain composure, though my chest tightened with the weight of his confession. "We're family. Whatever you're feeling, it's not right, and you need to stop this now." "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said after a pause, his voice thick with emotion. "But I had to be honest. I don't expect anything from you. I just couldn't keep it inside anymore." The line went silent except for the faint sound of his breathing. Finally, I exhaled, my voice softer now. "Patrick, you need to think about the consequences. Not just for us, but for the family. Promise me you'll put this behind you." "I'll try," he said, though there was no conviction in his words. After we hung up, I sat in the darkened living room, staring at the phone in my hand. The boundaries I had always assumed were unshakable had been breached, and I was left to wonder if things would ever return to normal. The phone call came late in the evening, the kind of call that grips you with dread before you even answer. "Kathleen." Patrick's voice was faint and strained. "I'm at County General. There was an accident." "What happened?" I asked, already grabbing my keys. "Just a stupid mistake. I'll be fine," he said, though his voice betrayed the pain he was hiding. I drove in silence, my heart pounding with a mix of worry and frustration. By the time I reached the hospital, the sterile smell and dim lighting amplified my unease. A nurse directed me to his room, where Patrick sat with his arm in a sling and a cut on his forehead. "Fell off a ladder," he explained sheepishly, offering a weak smile. "Guess I'm not as coordinated as I thought." "Patrick," I began, my tone sharp. "You scared me half to death. What were you thinking?" "I wasn't," he admitted, looking down. "Just trying to fix a light for a neighbor. Didn't realize the ladder was unsteady." I sighed, pulling a chair closer to his bed. "You've got to be more careful. This could have been so much worse." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You didn't have to come, you know." "Of course I did," I said firmly. "Your family." A shadow passed over his face, and I braced myself for what might come next. "Kathleen," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever think about us? About what I said?" "Patrick, stop," I replied, cutting him off. "This is not the time or place." "I know," he said, leaning back against the pillows. "But seeing you here, it reminds me how much you mean to me." I stood abruptly, needing to put some distance between us. "You need rest. We'll talk later." As I left the room, his gaze followed me, heavy with words unsaid. I walked down the hospital corridor, my mind swirling. This wasn't just an accident, it was another crack in the fragile foundation of our relationship, one I wasn't sure we could repair. It arrived late in the afternoon, a small brown package left neatly on my porch. The handwriting on the label was unmistakable. Patrick's. My stomach tightened as I carried it inside, setting it on the kitchen counter as if it might burst open on its own. I hesitated, pacing the room before finally slicing the tape with a knife. Inside was a neatly folded letter and a photo album. The sight of the album, its edges worn from years of handling, sent a shiver through me. It was from our childhood, passed down through the family, though I hadn't seen it in decades. I opened the letter first. Patrick's handwriting was careful, almost painstaking. "Kathleen, I know I've crossed lines, and I know you may never look at me the same again, but I need you to understand that what I feel isn't fleeting. It's been with me for as long as I can remember. I've included this album because I want you to see us through my eyes. Every moment, every memory, it all matters to me because of you. If this is too much, I'll leave as I promised, but I needed you to know the truth. Patrick." I exhaled sharply, the words weighing heavier than I anticipated. Against my better judgment, I opened the album. The first few pages were harmless, pictures of family gatherings, holidays, and birthdays. But then I saw the annotations. Patrick had written captions beneath each photo. "Christmas, 2005. You wore that green sweater and laughed at my terrible jokes. Summer barbecue. You told me about your first trip abroad. I couldn't stop listening." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Each note painted a picture of a man wrestling with emotions he couldn't control. A sudden knock at the door startled me. I shoved the album back into the box and wiped my face before opening it. It was Patrick. He stood there, hands in his pockets, his face a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Did you get it?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded but didn't invite him in. "Patrick, this is too much." "I just needed you to see," he said softly. "If you want me to go, say the word and I will." But I couldn't let this sit unspoken. His gaze held mine, searching for an answer I couldn't give. I stepped back, closing the door without another word, leaving him standing on the porch as I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Next morning I sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Patrick's words echoed in my mind, each one tugging at a nerve I didn't know existed. The photo album rested beside the letter. I hadn't responded to his messages, though his last one lingered on my phone. "I'll respect your decision, Kathleen, whatever it is." The doorbell rang, breaking my thoughts. I opened the door cautiously, and there he was again, Patrick, his expression unreadable. "I know I said I'd wait for your answer," he began, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. "But I couldn't sit around anymore, not knowing if I'd pushed you too far." "Patrick," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "This can't go on, you know that." He nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of disappointment. "I know what you're thinking. I know how this looks, but it's not something I can just turn off, Kathleen." "You have to," I replied, stepping onto the porch to face him fully. "You're young, you'll move on. Whatever this is, it's not love, it's confusion." His jaw tightened. "Don't tell me what I feel. You don't get to decide that." I looked away, my chest tightening. Maybe not, but I can decide what I can live with. And this, I gestured between us, but this will destroy our family. A long silence hung between us, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Finally, Patrick exhaled deeply. So that's it then? Yes, I said firmly, though my voice wavered. You'll thank me someday. He studied me for a moment longer, his shoulders slumping as he stepped back. I just hope you're right, he said quietly before turning and walking to his car. I watched him drive away, a hollow ache settling in my chest. Inside, I carefully resealed the package and placed it on the highest shelf in the closet. Out of sight, but never truly out of mind. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that leave you questioning yourself the most.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.